Hello, and welcome to the very first AnyRPG Development Livestream. In this livestream, I will be demonstrating development of the AnyRPG Engine, and this is basically focusing on the regular, normal, methodical side of software development. So we'll be doing bug fixes and maybe adding some new features to the engine, and it will be very sort of unscripted, just regular software development and a window into it. If you haven't heard of AnyRPG, it's a 100% free open source role-playing game engine written in C# for Unity. And you can head over to AnyRPG.org where you will find links to the source code. It's a 100% free and open source project, as well as links to a YouTube channel where you can see more information about the game engine and hopefully more of these types of development videos in the future. So we're just going to get straight into the development here. What we'll be doing today is attempting to fix some bugs that I found when I was recording some previous live streams. The first bug that I'm going to try to reproduce and fix is a bug that occurred when I hid the interface. I'm just going to turn all the volume down in the game here because I found in my last streams that it was really loud, and I'm sort of new to the streaming software, so I'm not quite sure how to adjust that yet. Maybe I just found the setting. Oh well, anyway, we'll play without volume here. So if we go into a new game, what I found, oh, there we go, is this thing right here. Our quest tracker is showing our quests, but if I hit the period key and hid my interface and came back, it wasn't properly tracking before. So let's see if we can get that bug to reappear here. Oh, no, I don't even know. We might not even really be able to reproduce that. You know what? There was one other way that I might be able to get this bug to show up here. So we're going to go into the settings menu here, and it may have happened when we individually disabled the quest tracker. There we go. Okay. So we're going to turn it off, and then we're going to try turning it back on again. Alright, we still see the content in it, and if we hit complete here, yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. So we just triggered it. So right now, we just turned in this quest a second chance. If we hit our log, it's not in our log, but it's still showing up here. So that happened when we enabled or disabled the quest tracker, and that likely means that it's no longer accepting references. So if we go into the quest tracker UI here, I bet we'll find some references for when we get quest status updated, and we initialize these references on enable and in start. And we disable these references in both the close window method and the on disable method. So that's definitely what's going wrong there. That's interesting, we initialize the references on enable. So it should have properly cleaned them up. So let's just take a look at that here. We're going to run a bunch of debug statements. And we're just going to make sure that these methods are properly firing here. And just see what order they're firing in as well. Because it appears that at some point we're losing a reference that would allow us to receive a quest status updated event from our system event manager, which would prevent us from actually showing these quests. Okay. And we're just going to find some of the other messages. Oh, I've got my Unity editor here is freezing up for a minute while it recompiles. Okay, great. So I've got another window over here. I generally, just because I like to have a view of my scene that allows me to see my entire user interface, I generally like to run my console and my scene in a different window. And I usually have that pulled over onto a second monitor here. So I guess I'll just drag it back whenever it's actually important to see stuff in here. So let's just clean up some of the debug messages from our previous debugging efforts here. We just fixed a bug where when we loaded a game, it would still have the combat messages visible from the previous player's play session. And it looks like we've got some AI patrol debug messages here as well. I noticed another bug after I did the first live stream where my AIs weren't despawning at the end of the patrol, and they were just sort of like piling up in a big pile, which could eventually lead to some issues if you left your game running for a few hours with all these mobs not despawning and just piling up. So that looks good. I think maybe we'll get rid of this draggable transform message too here. And maybe this character despawn message also. Okay, great. So we should have a pretty clean log now. I'm just gonna pull this out of the way so we can see the screen here, and let's load up the game. See if we can't reproduce that bug now, and see what order all these events were called in here. So if I go to the settings menu and I disable my quest tracker and re-enable it, and now I'm going to go head up to the Fountain of Time here, and we're going to talk to him and complete this quest, and awesome. Okay, so we didn't refresh the menu here. So let's pause the game here for a second, and then we're just going to take a look at our references here. So okay, so that's kind of interesting. Let's see what order that happened in. So we got a quest tracker on enable. We initialized our references. We opened the window. We showed our quests. Then when I disabled the quest tracker with a UI option, it got disabled. It cleaned up its event references. Then I re-enabled it. it reinitialized its event references and it showed the quests. Then it ran its start menu. Oh no, I see what happened here. Okay. For this thing to have run its start method, it had to have, so basically all this stuff happened actually during the load game manager. Yeah, okay, I see. So the game loaded basically, open the window, close the window. Then we get to our start method, which is where it's actually going to be displayed here before the first frame. We initialize our references. It actually closes the window, cleans up the event references. Open the window. Okay. The window, neat. Okay, I see what happened here. The window basically, when closed, cleaned up the event references, but when we reopened it, technically we never disabled it. So that's where the problem is right here. We are cleaning up event references when we close the window. And realistically, we really only want to clean up those event references when the window's actually disabled, I think. I'm not sure if this will cause any other bugs or not. Okay, so let's try that. Now, let's just take a look actually at what event references we're getting here. Because to be quite honest, the quest tracker UI really, I mean, this thing exists for the entire game. There isn't really a reason for it to be cleaning up and recreating event references every time we open and close the window here. Realistically, that's probably a whole lot of extra unnecessary calls. So I think maybe the best thing to do here let's figure out, we got on disable called here. Now how did we get on disable called? We literally set the object to active here, deactive here. Okay, so that's why. Whereas when we open and close the window, we're just basically sort of adjusting the alpha. we've got a common close window method somewhere inside of our window frame that this thing is inside of. Okay, so realistically, these event references right here, they really only need to be created and destroyed once. They should exist for the entire game. And this quest tracker UI is actually part of a series of objects inside of our game manager here. Let me just pull up the game manager. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So inside of our game manager, this thing is actually marked as don't destroy on load. And we've got a whole pile of UI elements in here, and these UI elements exist for the entire game. They will never ever be destroyed. So I know that Unity recommends cleaning up event references on disable, but quite honestly, in this case, we really don't want to. It's just sort of like a waste. We want these event references to just exist for the entire game, because the thing that we're referencing here, this the system event manager, that thing never gets disabled. It's way up at the top level. It's sitting under our game manager here, and it will never ever be disabled, unlike these UI elements, which actually we can enable or disable them realistically at any time. So we're just gonna make this actually into an onDestroy method here, because, and we're just gonna add a comment here, moved below functionality to on destroy, because these are static objects that exist for the entire game. So now we're going to change this to on destroy. We will only ever clean up these event references on destroy. And hopefully that all works okay. Because basically when we run our showQuests method right here, we already do some checking. The only thing that does is showQuests common. And showQuests common will already basically just not do anything if there's no player unit on screen. So that's fine, because the only thing that this quest tracker is capable of doing, it's not going to do when there's no player unit, and it kind of needs the player unit in order to grab these. So I think this will work. Hopefully this doesn't cause any bugs. It's one of the things that I found with developing a system this complex, is that every single change you make affects something else somewhere in the game. So let's log in and see if we can reproduce this bug again, or if we actually fixed it, and let's see if we can actually crash the game or not by doing it. So settings, quest tracker off, quest tracker on. Now we're going to go up and talk to the fountain of time. All right, disappeared from our log. Cool. All right, and let's just go take a look. We're going to pause this for a second, and we're just going to look at all of our debug messages here and just make sure that they make sense. So we enable it, we initialize some event references. It actually gets opened as part of the check UI settings. This is a method at the very, very beginning of the game that goes in and adjusts all of the saved transparency settings for everything. So you can't, basically the way that I think I found that Unity works is that, like, if an item is disabled and you adjust its transparency, the setting just apparently gets totally ignored. So we actually have to open them just for a brief second to allow them to be able to accept those updates, and then interesting, gets enabled twice. Because we set it active again. Oh, right, because I commented out my on disable code. So technically I got disabled somewhere in there, but I just don't have a debug messages for anymore. Okay, so that's fine. We go through and we attempt to initialize our event references. Of course, we're not actually going to, because if we look at the code, it's just going to return right there because they're technically already initialized. And this is just a safety check. This is actually a really, really important safety check. If you're ever creating event references for something, don't ever create two of them, because when you go through and you remove these, you'll only remove one of them and you'll end up with extra copies of event references. For this reason, anytime I create event references, I actually have all this extra code just to check and make sure that they're not already initialized. I found that that was very important. Otherwise, things just didn't work properly. All right, we're going to start. We're going to try to reinitialize them again. It's fine. We don't need to. And we show requests. Okay, so that looks good. Looks like actually we got that bug fixed potentially. So there were a few more bugs here, and that I found during that walkthrough. And let's see if I can actually demonstrate another one of these bugs here. I think this one I can actually demonstrate just without even going into the game here. So go to our key bindings and action bars here. I wanted to set one of my buttons to have control or shift on it. And you can see like we actually support this. We have shift alpha 1, control alpha 1. So that's great, but when I actually click this and I hit the control key on my keyboard, instead of seeing the control key as a modifier and waiting for me to press something other than the control key, it's just basically returning right away. And then assigning this totally wonky combination of control and left control to the keybind. So likely what's happening is we're just not discarding shift and control keys as keys that are allowed to end our whole key binding routine here. So let's go and do that, but first we're just going to take care of all these debug messages in here so we don't get spammed with them next time when we're trying to debug the screen. I've seen scripts before where they've got like if debug and a debug variable at the top and a whole pile of if then statements surrounding all these debug messages. I personally don't really like to do that, and the reasoning, I don't know, it may be sort of trivial, but basically every if then statement is a check that has to be performed at runtime. And if any of these references or I mean functions at all here are things that are getting performed like on a loop, then you've got an if statement for a debug literally just wasting processor cycles every loop. It may not be a lot, but just commenting them out just skips that whole check even happening. It's a little more work to enable or disable the debug references, but I just like it that way. Unnecessary processor cycles are never great. So we need to look in the keybind manager. I think this is where we're going to find code for binding keys. Either that or it may even be in the pop-up. Okay, bind key, here we go. So let's find what this is called. Perfect. Okay. So basically what we're doing here is we're setting a bind name variable. And the bind name variable basically, like so long as we're inside the program and this bind name variable is an empty, we're considered to be binding a key. And if this event is a key, then we're going to bind the key name, the key code, and whether or not control or shift we're actually so basically what we need to do here is we need to do a bunch of checking to only allow keys that are not Control or Shift to actually end this method, because as soon as we go into this bind key method here, let's just clean this up a little bit. There we go. So as soon as we go into this bind key method here, we're going to set this bind name to empty, and now we're no longer considered to be binding the key. So I think what we can do, we need to check for Control and Shift. And I have code elsewhere that does that. Let's see if I can find it here. Oops. We've got these keybind nodes here. No, the code's going to be somewhere else. I'll just bring that up though, because this might bring us over to some other code that's actually the stuff that we're looking for here. Input Manager, there we go. This is where we have all the code for the Control and Shift checking here. Oops. Okay. Okay, so basically what we need to do is we need to check and make sure that key code does not equal keycode.left shift, does not equal keycode.left control, does not equal keycode.right shift, and does not equal keycode.right control. Okay. So I don't know if this is going to work, because I think it'll work basically, because what we're looking for is that if you hit any key that's not left control or right control, then the e.keycode will work. Now e.control and e.shift are actually like different in the sense that like they'll always be valid, I think, so long, like no matter what this is, as long as they were held down at the same time as it. At least according to these descriptions here. So theoretically, this will prevent us from binding unless something else is being pressed at the same time as those. So let's try that out. Okay. So we can, whoops, go to the settings menu here and key bindings. And then let's try binding this one to shift 1. Haha, yeah, that works. Beauty. Okay, and we're just going to rebind this to alpha 3, and that works. And we're going to try rebinding this to control 4, and that worked. Apparently control 4 in Unity also detaches my hierarchy, interestingly enough. Okay, and let's try this one with right shift and 9. Okay, and we're going to try this one with like right control and 9. All right, and apparently 9 opens the Unity asset store. All right, that's neat. So that looks good. It looks like we're properly now able to bind our keys. Sorry, and we're properly ignoring those modifier keys when they're just held down by themselves, which is awesome. So let me just pause the game here because I don't know if that's my actual hierarchy. No, that's a new copy of my hierarchy. Okay, good. So that looks like that bug is pretty much fixed. Okay, yeah, that looks good. Okay, so let's go and clean up our messages, because this thing right here, if you can see, is firing literally every single frame because that's an on GUI. So we've just got a ton of messages in our console here. And maybe we'll just look around for anything else that we had in here. Just get rid of all those debug messages, because every time that there's a debug message, I'm sure, like, if you've been using Unity for a while, this is probably old news to you, but inside of those debug messages is actually a stack trace, and those stack traces just really slow your program down. Don't want stack traces happening when your game is running. So that looks good, and now of course this is all open source, so we're gonna upload this now to the GitHub repository. So we look at our Git status, we can see, yeah, okay, we've got a couple windows there. So we're just going to add everything, put a nice helpful commit message in there. And that looks pretty good. Fix key binding bug that would end key bind early on control or shift. All right. And you may have seen other, sort of tutorials and stuff where people are going to upload at the end of every episode they're doing. I like to have a clean Git commit history. The beginning of this Git commit history is actually pretty bad. You'll see like my original RC commits have probably like 50 fixes in each of them. But from now on, I want to keep a nice clean history, just the same as you would do if you were doing this, like, for any other like professional project or something like that. Pretty much one commit should just be its own self-contained thing, so that they're easier to revert or look back and figure out exactly what change was done. All right, so that bug seems solved, and there was one more bug that I caused or found while we were doing our last walkthrough, and I just want to see if I can get that one to trigger. This one might be a little more complex. So let's go see if we can trigger it. So I'm going to have to load this guy over here. And he's over in the SoulForge right now. So we need to get him back to Birch Grove. I don't have any like GM functionality in here right now to allow me to warp, so we just have to go through the game and play it normally to get where we're going and try to trigger this bug here. So the bug that I'm trying to trigger, I'm just going to describe it, is that when I opened up the vendor window for one of the Knights of the Cheddar table there, I had found that it was showing basically this guy's stuff right here. So we create all these pages with all this loot and stuff on them, and then I think what's happening is it's not clearing those pages when that window gets closed or something. So let's take a run over and see if we can reproduce this here. Okay, so here's our vendor. And no, wow, that's so strange. Okay. So last time I played this, when I was playing through that demo, I was able to get this guy to not properly show his items. He was showing basically the items from the other vendor, and he didn't have his pages cleared. So I think at this point we might have to mess around a little bit to try to reproduce that. So let's see what the problem might be. I bet that, let's try something for a second. Let's just turn off the UI, which will cause that to get disabled. Turn the UI on, which will cause that to get re-enabled. Go look in there. unlike the other bug that we solved earlier that had to do with like on enable, on disable stuff, that vendor window there, I don't know that we ever directly set that active to false or not. So if we go back to this guy, we've properly got his stuff here. Okay, let's try disabling and re-enabling everything. And because when I caused this bug last time, I just went through and I just like disabled everything that there was. All right, and then we're just going to re-enable everything. I've had bugs before that, you know, it's hard to reproduce them and you end up like several months later accidentally solving them while you're trying to solve something completely different. So let's go back and, oh, yeah, there's an interesting one. Oh, that goes away automatically when we move anyway. Okay. So let's go back now to these knights and see if we can reproduce that bug again. Okay, we got it. All right. Okay, so that was really interesting. I'm not sure exactly what caused that there, but we were able to reproduce it. We've got a page that has the right number of items on it because he only sells 2 items, but we're actually showing basically page 5 of the other guys. And this code here is supposed to allow this to or refresh these numbers here in the very beginning, and that's not happening. So look at that, we've got a null reference exception over here, and a bunch of other stuff we should probably disable. So we're actually just going to turn the game off entirely right now. Maybe clean up this other stuff so it's not spamming our logs when we're trying to see what happened. Okay, so this is likely the cause of our issue here. Index was out of range, must be non-negative and less than the size of the collection, and that was triggered right here page index. Okay. So the vendor UI doesn't have any references. So this is not a bug that has anything to do with references, it looks like. And honestly, that makes sense. This vendor UI doesn't really respond to events of any sort like the quest log needs to. And let's see, that code got triggered right here in add items. Add items got triggered by create pages. Create pages was called by init window. Which was called by onOpenWindow handler. Okay, good. So that explains why we not only didn't get our page to load, but we also didn't get the page count on the bottom updating. And that is because we crashed in this method, basically. An interesting thing about C# is that when you get one of these no reference exceptions here, basically nothing else after it runs. Like pretty much anything, like the rest of the stack is like foobarred. So that definitely explains why none of that stuff happened. This is on page update count handler. There's also another thing that I kind of want to fix in here right now. It's not really related to this bug, but it's something that I might be able to fix. Oh wait, ability book UI. No, we want like vendor UI or something. Vendor UI. Okay, who subscribed to that? Right, I paged window content, subscribe to that. No, nobody subscribed to that. Okay, what we actually need here, I think, there's a vendor window frame. That's going to call that. So let's just look for that. Okay, there we go. So this is our paged window, and this is what's actually responsible. The way that the AnyRPG engine has windows designed is there are basically window frames and then window contents. And a paged window frame basically has a callback. There we go. There it is right there, where it's going to update the amount of pages that it shows based on what its window frame told it to do. So when I go into this update navigation area function here, yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. So what I recently discovered is that Unity buttons have, and I'll actually demonstrate this. Why don't I pull up our vendor window here. Let's just open this prefab up. Okay, good. So now we can look at the buttons. Unity buttons have a disabled color here, and you can see, it's telling us, yeah, there's a disabled color. And logically you might think, okay, cool. Well, if I wanted to show the disabled color, I should just disable it, right? So we're going to set enabled equals false, and that is totally not what you have to do. Instead, what you have to do is you have to set it to interactable equals false. It would totally make sense that they should call this the non-interactable color rather than the disabled color, considering that everywhere else in the UI we use the word enabled to refer to the opposite of it's disabled and stuff. But let's try that. And hopefully that'll actually make the buttons like a little bit more gray when you can't do anything with them. And I'm actually just going to set those to like a darker gray. Maybe, maybe even bump up that a little bit, just to make it like really obvious that you can't go back or forth with them. Okay, so hopefully that works. And then let's get back to this vendor issue here that we're trying to solve. So we had, once again, a out of range index. Okay, I see exactly what happened here. Page index is set to 0 by default because all integers are non-nullable types, and so they have a page index of 0. And that page index is getting reset when we load a page. And that's it. So the very first time we load a vendor, it's fine because our page index is 0. No worries. But the next time that we load it, our page index, if we were on the last page, oh, that's why I had trouble triggering this bug. We actually had to have closed the original vendor on a page other than the first page in order to trigger this bug on the next vendor. That explains it. So we're going to reset the page index to 0 when we clear that pages array on the close window. In fact, every time we clear the pages array, we're going to reset the index to 0, so we're going to put that inside a function too. call it clear all pages. You know what? Just clear pages is fine. We don't have to call it clear all pages. That's like sort of redundant because we're already clearing all the pages. And we're going to move this code inside of there. And now we're going to run. Whoa, hold on. What did I just do there? Right. Let's try that again. Clear pages. Good. And then we're going to take that line, copy it, paste it over there. Now our page index is successfully reset to 0. We will likely properly be able to go through this and add all of our stuff, and hopefully we won't trigger that button anymore. So that button actually didn't have, I don't think, anything to do with me enabling or disabling Windows. I think it was 100% due to just leaving the thing on the last page. Yeah. Okay, this looks good. Let's try it out. And maybe if we're really lucky, we will also see our buttons being enabled or disabled properly as well now. Okay, so like we expect that this is going to work. Let's just prove that it does. Good. We have his items. Ah, there we go. Awesome. Yes, they're gray. Cool. So that worked very well. And let's go back to our base now. We're going to go talk to the other vendor, and we are going to leave ourselves on page 5 of his UI. Then we're going to go back to the mice, talk to that vendor, and hope it doesn't crash. Okay, good. So, yeah, all right, cool. So that's gray. We go all the way over to page 5. This is now gray. Okay. So we're going to leave this on page 5. Oh, you know what? That was totally a coincidence that there was 2 items on there and there was 2 items on the most one. It's just because this page only had 2 items. You know what? Let's leave this on page 4. Page 4 is full of items, and that's actually going to be a way better test. So now we're going to close that, and we'll head back to the mice. Because 4 is still greater than 0, so if we have like a negative index issue, that'll still help us debug it. And the other thing that it'll help us do is if we have like some issue where we're not properly clearing all the items on the page, then what I'll expect to see actually is like the 2 items that the mouse actually sells up at the top, and then like the 8 items from the other vendor, because I actually did have a bug like that before. Rad. 1 page, no crashes. If we pull our console log over here, it's nice, just a bunch of information messages. And let me just make sure I can actually buy stuff from him. Yeah, we got a second cheese. I guess I didn't make this cheese stackable. And I can buy vials of water from him. Good. Let's see, I think there was like one more really tiny bug that I noticed during the demo. I'm trying to remember what it was exactly. Oh, right, yes. There we go. Now I remember. Okay. Right now we can see, we can open up the reputation window and the skills window and the achievements window. And the currency window. And that's because all of these windows currently have content in them. But when we open them up or attempt to open them up when there is no content in them, it wasn't opening them. And this is due to the fact, I think, that paged windows have a tendency to close themselves when they have 0 items, and that's mostly due to the fact that we want a paged window to close if it's like the loot window or something, because you don't want a loot window with no items to just be sitting there open. You sort of want it to auto close once you've looted everything. So let's just start a new game and see if we can reproduce that bug, because it looks like we may need to just override that behavior somehow. Okay, so I open up my character panel. That's great. It shows, and there we go. Reputation, achievement, skills, and currency. Nothing's happening. And to the user, this is going to be a little bit confusing because, as a developer, I'm aware that, well, there's literally just no reputation to show. But it's not a great user experience to just not show them a window and leave them wondering why nothing happened when you clicked on that button. So let's get rid of the debug messages from our previous debugging session here. Oh, you know what? How many bugs did I fix since my last git commit? Yeah, let's just go and let's make sure we commit that, because we just fixed a bug and we want to try to keep all our commits nice and small and self-contained. Okay, good. I think that was just the only commit there. So let's see. Fixed bug with page index not resetting in vendor window. Okay, great. So the next bug we're going to try to fix is with these paged windows here. So paged window, let's see here. At some point, the paged window is going to close itself, or maybe the paged window contents close themselves. Well, let's just take a look at our currency window. See if we can't figure out what's happening here. So currency window is a paged window. We already have the code for that open, and there we go, right here. Okay, so our update navigation area call will automatically close the window if it's got a page count of 0. And since update navigation area gets called on page up count update handler, which is automatically called by all paged windows, including our currency panel here. Right here, it's on open window handler. think is what's going to call our page count update handler. No, or it's like create pages or something. Yeah, there we go. On page count update handler. That's a really terrible name. I don't know what I was thinking here. These things, according to like I think the regular C# update or C# standards, are literally supposed to be just on page count update. I think. And same deal here. Like the handler is the method you're supposed to subscribe to this thing. 27 unresolvable conflicts, huh? Wait. Okay. Let's go to iPaged window contents, which is iClosable window contents. Yeah, that's why I did it. We actually have methods called onCloseWindow and onOpenWindow. Those are terrible names. I'm going to rename those. I'm going to give them an even more terrible but less conflicting name. I'm going to call it, who knows, receive closed window notification. It's a long and terrible name, but it's not going to conflict with our good, decent naming scheme for the rest of these events we're using. Receive open window notification. So basically, just a little bit of background behind this method. This method is not like any sort of like automated method or any sort of like event handler or anything like that. Basically, it's just part of the iClosable window contents interface, so that any window frame that has a iClosable window contents can just call this thing directly without having to use event subscriptions to do it. So that's why it's like that. And I think I probably created these original methods long before I created the event versions of them. There's reasons why these two things exist separately, but I don't really want to get too deep into that right now. So anyway, we can now finally rename onOpenWindow handler to onOpenWindow, and we're not going to have any conflicts there. And then we can rename onCloseWindow handler to onCloseWindow. And finally, we are actually using names that other programmers are not going to get confused by if they look at this code. Hopefully. On page count update, on open window, on close window. Good. So going back actually to the original problem that we were trying to solve here. We run on page count update, which has been subscribed to by our window here. There we go. Now we've got things that make sense. And when we do that, we run update navigation area, which is going to close the window. So what we need is basically a way to override that. And if we think about all of the paged windows in the game, let's consider for a second what the best default behavior for this is going to be. So if we think about all of the paged windows in the game, we got a currency window, we've got an ability window, we've got, all those 4 windows that we showed, we've got our vendor window, and we've got our loot window. So with all those other windows, we always want them to stay open. The only window out of all those windows that we want to close automatically when the page count is 0 is the loot window. So what that actually means is our default behavior here is actually kind of backwards. We want to be able to update the navigation area without closing the window. So what we're going to do here is we're going to put a Boolean in here that controls this. And we're going to require it to be true in order for that window with a page count of 0 to be automatically closed. And we're not going to be able to subscribe now because that's not going to work. Because it's expecting an update navigation area call with no parameters, so we can fix that by just doing a and this is actually kind of silly here, because what you can see though is that even though, like, to the rest of the program, if I make this update navigation area call with no parameters, this Boolean with the default value here is just going to be automatically put in. But when we actually subscribe to an event here, we can't do that because apparently events aren't aware of default values, or just ignore them in their calculation of whether or not you're subscribing to something with the same event signature. So we actually need to do this, and literally, we can't call ourself here. So what we're going to do is just call update navigation area with false so that we actually get the correct one, because I think if we just called update navigation area, it might try to call itself. I don't know. But this is a little more explicit. So that's great. So by default, an update navigation area count update navigation area will always come back as false. So now all we need to do no, you know what? Actually, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this a little differently. Actually, I think maybe I'm just going to let all the windows control that themselves. Because that way, I'm going to have one event signature that I don't have to worry about trying to mess with. So basically, I'm just going to add a Boolean basically into this thing. And everybody that calls it, oops, is going to have to specify what's going on there. There, okay. Whoa, okay, I have no idea what just happened there. I think I accidentally hit an insert key or something. There. Okay, that's better. So everybody that subscribes to this is going to have to provide it with a Boolean value. interestingly enough, the event signature matches. Okay. Okay. Right. So now what I'm going to need to do is these are all going to be broken. So I'm just going to click on Go to Implementation, and I can see everything that's implementing my paged window interface here, and they all just need booleans at the beginning there in order to now comply with the new signature for that event. Okay, there we go. So now those should all have the right signature, and awesome. So achievement panel, we always want, okay, and this will ensure, hopefully, bool close empty window. Yeah, okay, good. So achievement panel and loot UI. Loot UI is the only one that we ever want to automatically close. When it's empty. Everything else should leave the window open to basically let us know that there's literally no contents to show. So we're just going to go through the rest of these guys and fix all these broken things now. Okay, that looks good. So let's just take a look at our console log here and make sure that we didn't cause any more errors by doing that. Console looks good, no error messages, so that's fine. So let's go back into the game now and see if we can properly load empty pages. All right. Okay, there's what actually, you know what, I accidentally hit continue here. We got to hit new game in order to get like another character. But first what we're going to do is we're just going to go kill a bunch of goblins and loot them. So let's do fire destruction ore because that's my favorite. I'm just going to be nuking these guys like mad. Actually, you know what else we need? We need tentacles. I don't even want them to be able to hit me while I'm nuking them. There we go. And we can do like a life tether as well to really knock them down. Okay, cool. So that looks good. Let's loot these guys. We're gonna hit take all. The loot window properly closes, so that's good. So our existing functionality has been preserved. Loot windows will properly close themselves. So now we're going to drop back to the main menu, and we're going to start a new game. And we're just going to check that when we hit our reputation. Okay, so. All right. We got to do something about this, basically. We just see some default text in here. We got default text for all of them here. We got super duper awesome achievements, hardcore mode raiders. What else do we have? Skills. Skills doesn't have anything. Interesting. No defaults in skills, and no defaults in currency. So what's interesting about the skills window is that it didn't have anything in there. So if we can figure out why the skills window didn't have anything, as well as why we have 1 out of 0 pages. I think I know that basically. So technically, if we have 0 pages, we actually really should show 1 page. It's just sort of 1 page with nothing in it. So let's take a look at the skills UI, because the skills UI may actually have some special code in it to be clearing out all of those buttons. Either that, or the skills UI may just have all the buttons disabled by default. So we want skill panel or something like that. Skill book window. Well, that's close enough. That'll get us the name of the panel. Skill book panel. There we go. So when we look at the skill book panel, what we see is that all of these buttons are enabled by default here. If we were to pull this thing up in our scene view, right there, our skill is the Seer of Mysterious Things. And you can see that we've got 10 default buttons though. There. So this means that the skill book UI is doing something special. It is disabling these buttons when it loads by default. And look at that. We've got a method called clear buttons that is called at the beginning of every load page function. So we comply with this, with the skillbook UI, to an interface called paged window contents. Now this is kind of interesting because I feel like there's an opportunity here to maybe make sort of like a base class that actually has this clear buttons functionality inside of it, and then when we called load page, we would just basically call base.loadPage, which would automatically handle all of that for us. But that wouldn't necessarily work because we've got skill buttons here, and skill buttons are specific to this particular type of window. We need to clear all the buttons every time we do load a page, because of the fact that if we load a page with, let's say for example, 10 items on it, and then we go and we load a page with only 3 items on it, we're still going to have the 7 items from the previous page showing. So that definitely needs to be done no matter what. Let's take a look at the broken books and see how they are handling their load page method. So one of those was the currency panel. Now, interestingly enough, the currency panel actually technically does have a clear buttons method, and it should realistically be clearing all those currency buttons when we load a page. So what's the difference here? This load page call the vendor window loads its page when it receives its open window notification. Let's take a look at paged window here. There we go, that's where it's called. Okay. So we have a load page called on next page and previous page. This is really interesting. It's like load page never gets called, but for the skill book, it's like it does get called. You know what? Let's throw some debug messages in here because I'm having trouble sort of grasping where or what the difference is between the skill book and everything else. I just want to see, my stack trace is basically going to tell me where these messages are coming from. Okay, so we'll open that up now, and hopefully we'll get some useful error messages or debug messages now telling us what is the difference between skill book and the rest of them, and why does it not show a bunch of default items in it. Okay. so we have some messages here. Clear buttons. And then add skills. Okay, so clear buttons got called as a result of receive open window notification. Which asked us to create pages. Okay. Now this one did a create pages as well. There's our problem. There's our problem right there. Okay, I see now. So, Skillbook UI calls clear buttons before it calls pages.clear. Okay, let's just take a look at these two methods. So right here we see clear buttons and clear pages, right? It seems to me like these methods really should be linked. No, maybe not. Clear pages should definitely call clear buttons. No question about that. Clear buttons needs to be called on its own because it will be called at the beginning of every load page as well. Okay. So right, this is why the iPage window contents code. So vendor UI is part of a window content controller. But Skillbook UI is just part of a mono behavior. Yeah, it seems like at some point in the future, I may want to have this just like as a common base class for everything. Oh, right. No, okay, I see the issue here. Window content controller is implemented by a whole pile of stuff that is totally not paged window contents. But, right, okay, which makes sense because that's why we can't put all these like create pages and stuff methods into that common base class, because this is actually inheriting from a class and you can't inherit from two classes. Okay, so for now, basically this just means that we kind of need some redundant code realistically. Kind of sucks because I hate redundant code. It'd be really nice if your interface could actually have some methods associated with it and you could do like some sort of multiple inheritance. I mean, I understand diamond inheritance and stuff and reasons why that isn't possible, but it does lead to cases like this where we do end up with redundant code. Because essentially every single implementation of paged window contents now needs this exact clear pages method to ensure that we don't accidentally miss button clearing. So our ability book UI, our currency panel UI, our reputation book, our skill book, our clear pages, our achievement panel, right, and our loot UI. Okay. Interesting. Okay, looks like loot UI already had that implementation of it, right? Okay. Well, now everybody has that implementation of it. And then all we need to do basically is replace all instances of pages.clear in all of these windows with clear pages. Good, we have precisely one copy of it in there. And one copy of it in there. Okay, good. And now we don't need that clear buttons method there either, because that's automatically handled inside of our clear pages method. Good. So now every implementation of paged window contents is hopefully going to be clearing all of their buttons on load. Now the final thing we want to do is that whole 1 out of 0 display that's happening, and that's happening actually at the paged window level. So when we update our navigation area, we do this right here. Get page count. Now we need the page count to properly return 0 because we do things based on that, like close the window, for example. So all we have to do here is just clamp this thing between its current count 1 and mathf.infinity. I don't think we're ever really going to want technically infinite pages, but no reason in artificially limiting our page count at this point. So now if it's 0, it'll show 1 out of 1, and theoretically it'll be empty. So let's just confirm that those bugs are fixed. Oops. Okay. Unity's doing something on me here. Okay. All right. Let's go back out there. I'm going to save this because if we ever get into like any infinite loops or something like that, then an infinite loop, you can't ever really like pause your game or break out of the Unity editor because all the strokes that actually pause your game aren't actually recorded until the end of the frame. And the frame technically never ends if you're in an infinite loop, making your editor just sit there play the game forever. So always save your stuff before you go. Okay, and we're just going to make our spell power a little bit stronger by sticking on all of this spell power gear so that we can extremely quickly nuke these guys. Yeah, much better. We're doing like 140 damage per hit to them. Okay, good. So now we have some loot, and we got 5 pages. We can close the loot window. The loot window looks okay. All right, we'll just go test out a couple other type of paged windows here. Rep window's good. Achievements window is down there again. All right, the rest of these windows all look good too. We'll just go over to the vendor, make sure he's still doing okay here. Good, he's good. And let's head back to the main menu here, and we'll go start a new game. And yeah, there we go. We got gray arrows, meaning we can't. You can't tell I'm scrolling my mouse right now, but you can't change pages. Interesting. The achievements window, its position is not getting saved. It looks like. Let's just test that out. Go back to the main menu. And where were we? We were on the level 18 version of this guy before. And if I open up this, there we go. Yeah, achievements panel's not getting saved. Okay, so everything except for the achievements panel is getting saved. I think, you know what? Let's just confirm that. Save game. That should save the achievements panel position. We can go back down to the main menu. Hit continue. Look at that. Achievements panel down at the bottom again. Okay, we're going to fix that bug separately. We have confirmed basically for now though. Actually, let's just go back to the main menu and start a new game. We'll just make sure all the windows actually come up. 1 out of 1, 1 out of 1, achievements, 1 out of 1, currency, 1 out of 1. Perfect. So empty panels now load properly. So I think we're good to call this bug fixed. And we're just going to upload that to our GitHub just to make sure that we don't lose any of our progress. Wow, that was a pretty big fix. Touched a lot of stuff in that one. Okay. So I'll give this a nice commit message. Let's see, fixed button and navigation area display of paged windows. Okay, that looks good. And now we just discovered that one more bug where it's not properly saving the position of the achievements window. So let's just take care of that one too, because there's no point in leaving known bugs sitting around in our software. So this is all done basically by the UI manager. One of the UI managers. Pop-up window manager manages achievement list window, but it's actually the save manager that manages the saving of all the windows here, and that's I think in a message called save window positions. So let's see if we can figure out. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So we are saving achievement list window X position, achievement list window Y position. And I have a feeling this is probably something really simple, like just a spelling mistake, because if I've got the code here for it, then it should be working realistically. So look at the load window positions here. There, right there. Yeah, we had a lowercase digit on there. It's interesting that it actually even loaded that, because technically, like I kind of would have. Oh, you know what? No, it didn't even load it. That's probably what happened right there. Yeah, okay, good. That's why. Because I was going to say, like, if it attempted to load that, then we'd get like a null reference error, basically, for like, or like a key doesn't exist error or something. But it didn't find it because it was looking for the capital one, which is why it never loaded it. Let's also just go up and check our set default values routine here. We have a routine that's going to go and set no, load window positions, save window positions. Oh, you know what? No, this is probably where the code is. This load window positions. Maybe we don't set default values. Maybe that's automatically done. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so all we're doing basically is like on load, we're just checking if these keys exist. If they don't, then we just don't do anything. The windows just go wherever their default positions are. And then when we save, we will always be adding those keys. So that's fine. We don't actually need to set defaults for those. Right, okay, good. So that looks good. Let's take a look at that and see if we can actually save our achievement window position now. Go into this guy right here. Load him up, hit his character panel. Awesome. So the achievement window position has actually been getting saved the entire time. It was just never loading because of that faulty if-then check, which is why it didn't appear at the bottom this time. It just automatically appeared at the top. One other interesting little thing here that I'm noticing, we've got a little bit of an issue with the skills window here. Its text is like bumped over a little bit, and I think this is just because of some issue that I have to fix with the way that the UI settings are and whether or not this thing is expandable. This is actually kind of nice because this one actually isn't a code fix, so we can still commit the achievement code fix and make this fix at the same time without having two fixes in our code. So let's just go exit the game for a second. Just make sure when we go back in, all four of those windows are sort of like lined up across the screen like we wanted. Load game, go back to this guy, load him up. And we'll hit our character panel. Nice, okay, good. So they're all there. Awesome, so we're just gonna go into the skills window list here. Try to find that inside our game manager. Skill book window, there we go. Now let's open this thing up, and I have a feeling, I think I know exactly what the issue is here. Basically, our title bar is fine, but we've got a title area and a close button. Now, with the close button, what we want to do is we want to add a layout element here and set the flexible width to 0, which will basically prevent it from expanding, and we'll keep it a constant size of 30. And then what we want to do here is, I think on this title area here, we want to add the layout element here, and we want to set the flexible width to 1, so it'll basically expand to take up all of the remaining space on the window. And I think part of our problem is I think we have this set to middle center, and we actually want it here as well to middle left. So now the text should be sort of hugging the left hand side of the window rather than like trying to float across to the center of that title bar. So we'll go back out here, save the game again. You never can save it too many times. And we're going to hit play and see what happens. So let's load this guy up again. And reputations, achievements, Skills, awesome. Skills is now properly on the left-hand side of the window, exactly where it should be. And currency list. Okay, good. So it looks like that was all the bugs that I had discovered during the last playthrough. Let's just commit this thing to GitHub one more time with that latest little fix. In case you're wondering here, I'm only committing the scripts directory for the actual AnyRPG engine, and that's because it's not good to have humongous GitHub repositories, and this entire project is like 30 gigs or more. It's pretty humongous, but the actual scripts themselves, I don't know if this is actually going to work. It's actually going to show this in human readable format here. You can see the scripts themselves are actually pretty small. I mean, we're talking like kilobytes here. That for some reason never works. Go dot. I don't think that'll work either. There we go, 5.4 megs. So that's why I'm just committing the scripts directory, because that way if you want to download the source code, it's like super, super tiny. Okay, save manager now properly loads achievement window position. Awesome. So that's all the bugs that we're going to be fixing today in this live stream. I'm going to be very shortly doing another live stream, and in that one we will be going through basically a pretty deep dive into all of the scriptable objects that control how the engine is basically displaying all the content. And so be sure to tune in for that. If you like these types of like just raw development episodes, then please give this video a thumbs up. The more thumbs ups I get, or the more subscriptions I get, the more I'm going to be creating these. I don't want to create anything that people aren't interested in, but if people are interested in this type of content, I absolutely love doing this, and I'd love to make more of it. And if you're looking for something a little more focused, where you're not just watching me sort of stumble around and debug things all day long, then I'm going to create a tutorial series in the future. And with a tutorial series, I will start with code that's complete. You don't have to watch the process that went into creating it, and we'll just be explaining basically what the code does and the reasons why it does that. So if you want to see those, definitely subscribe to the channel, and especially leave comments. Comments are the best way to let me know what you'd like to see, because I'd like to just basically create any type of content that you want to see in these series in the future. So thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next time. In the meantime, be sure to check out AnyRPG.org and watch more videos on the Cohesion channel. All the links for that, of course, are at the AnyRPG website.